The phone rang at exactly 2:17 a.m., cutting through the silence like a rusty blade. I'd been lying awake for 3 hours, staring at the ceiling of our suburban bedroom, listening to Kendra's breathing beside me. Except she wasn't beside me. Her side of the bed was cold, the sheets pulled tight like she'd never been there at all. "Working late again, honey?" Her voice came through the speaker, sweet as artificial sugar. "Don't wait up." But there was something else. A male voice in the background, barely audible but crystal clear to someone who'd been expecting it. No way he believes that. I sat up in bed, my mechanic's hand steady despite the adrenaline coursing through my veins. 20 years of fixing engines had taught me patience, precision, and how to spot a problem before it destroyed everything around it. "You're right, Travis," I said into the phone. I don't believe it." The line went ended. I'd been Jack Harmon for 38 years, and I'd never been the kind of man who made rash decisions. I owned Harmon's Auto Repair on the east side of Millbrook, Massachusetts, a town that sat like a forgotten stepchild between Boston and nowhere. I fixed cars, paid my taxes, and loved a woman who apparently thought I was too stupid to notice when she stopped coming home at night. But here's the thing about being underestimated your whole life. It teaches you to pay attention to details. Like how Kendra had started working late 3 nights a week, always on the same nights Travis Ford had client dinners. Like how she'd bought new underwear and hidden it in the back of her drawer. Like how she'd started locking her phone and taking it to the bathroom. I pulled on my jeans and called my locksmith buddy Danny. Emergency rates didn't matter anymore. "Jack, it's 2:30 in the morning, man. I need every lock in my house changed. Now. Tonight. Can you do it?" Danny knew better than to ask questions when a man's voice sounded like mine did. "Give me 40 minutes. While Danny worked, I moved through our open-plan house like a man possessed. Kendra's clothes went into suitcases, her toiletries, her books, her collection of motivational coffee mugs that said things like "boss babe" and "hustle hard," everything that screamed of the woman who'd been lying to me for months. I dragged the suitcases to the front porch and set them down like Christmas presents for someone I didn't want to see anymore. The coffee was brewing when I heard her car in the driveway. Through the kitchen window, I watched my wife of 8 years climb out of her Honda Civic, smoothing down her skirt and checking her reflection in the car window. Travis Ford sat in the passenger seat, his gym-built frame hunched forward like he was trying to disappear. Kendra's key rattled against the new lock. Once, twice, then frantic scratching as she tried to understand why her world had suddenly stopped working. "Jack!" she screamed, pounding on the door. "Jack, what the hell is going on? Open this door right now!" I sipped my coffee and started recording on my phone. Through the window, I watched Travis finally get out of the car, his face pale in the streetlight. He was everything I wasn't. Tall, polished, the kind of man who wore suits to work and had never had grease under his fingernails. "The locks are changed, Kendra," I called through the door, my voice steady as a mechanic's hands. "Your stuff's on the porch. Take it and go." "You can't do this. This is my house too." "Was. Past tense. Check your phone in about 5 minutes." I'd already uploaded the recording of our call to the cloud and sent copies to my lawyer, my brother, and my own phone. While Kendra screamed and Travis tried to calm her down, I filled out the preliminary divorce papers I'd downloaded weeks ago, just in case. Mrs. Reardon's porch light came on across the street, then the Hendersons next door. Soon half the neighborhood was awake, watching Kendra Harmon have a meltdown on her own front porch while her lover stood helplessly beside her. When Officer Tate arrived, called by someone who'd heard the screaming, I was ready. I opened the door with the recording queued up on my phone and a printout of Kendra's recent credit card statements showing charges at hotels I'd never seen. "Evening, Billy," I said to the cop who'd been 2 years behind me in high school. "Sorry about the noise." Billy Tate listened to the recording, looked at the statements, and then at Kendra, who was still demanding to be let into her house. "Ma'am, if your name's not on the deed and your husband has evidence of infidelity, you need to leave the premises," Billy said, his voice carrying the authority of someone who'd broken up domestic disputes for 15 years. "This is insane," Kendra shrieked. "Jack, be reasonable. We can talk about this." "We just did," I said, holding up my phone. "At 2:17 this morning. Travis was very helpful with his commentary." That's when Travis finally bolted. He mumbled something about having to work early and practically sprinted to his BMW, leaving Kendra standing on the porch with her suitcases and her shattered facade. Billy waited until Travis's taillights disappeared before turning back to Kendra. "Ma'am, you need to leave now, or I'll have to arrest you for trespassing." I watched from my doorway as my wife of 8 years loaded her belongings into her car, tears streaming down her face, her perfect makeup finally ruined. She looked up at me once, her eyes pleading. "Jack, please, let me explain." Explanation's not necessary, I said. But here's what is. Don't come back, don't call, don't text. And tell Travis that if he sets foot on my property again, I'll consider it a threat. As her car pulled away, I closed the door and locked it with the new deadbolt. The house felt different already. Cleaner, like someone had opened all the windows and let the stale air escape. I finished my coffee and watched the sunrise through the kitchen window, thinking about how quickly a life could change. At 2:17 a.m., I'd been a fool. By 6 a.m., I was a free man with a plan. The divorce papers were filed by 9 a.m. By noon, I'd changed my Facebook status and blocked Kendra on every platform I could think of. By evening, the whole town of Millbrook knew that Jack Harmon had caught his wife cheating and thrown her out in the middle of the night. But that was just the beginning. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. The Rusty Wrench hadn't changed in 20 years. Same sticky floors, same neon beer signs, same crowd of guys who'd rather drink their problems than face them. It was exactly the kind of place where a man could gather information without anyone thinking he was up to something. So, Travis Ford, huh? My best friend Pete Martinez set down his beer and shook his head. Can't say I'm surprised. Guy's been working his way through half the women at Millbrook Tech Solutions. Pete had been my friend since high school, back when we were both too skinny and too smart for our own good. Now he was a bouncer at 3 different bars and knew everyone's business in a 50-mile radius. What do you mean, half the women? I asked, though I had a feeling I already knew. Dude's got a system. Finds married women who work late, tells them their husbands don't appreciate them, plays the sensitive guy routine. Your wife's probably the 4th one this year. The beer in my hand suddenly tasted like metal. 4th? Jenny Walsh from accounting, Sarah Chen from marketing, and that new girl in HR. What's her name? Lindsay something. She's the one who introduced him to your wife, actually, Lindsay Carpenter. Kendra's work friend, the one who was always posting inspirational quotes on social media and talking about supporting other women. The same Lindsay who'd been encouraging Kendra to live her truth and not settle for less than she deserved. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through Kendra's Facebook friends until I found Lindsay's profile. Her latest post was a selfie with the caption, "Sometimes you have to break a few hearts to find your own happiness. No regrets. Sue living my truth." Posted 3 hours ago, right around the time Kendra would have been crying to her about getting kicked out. Pete, I need a favor. Name it. I need to know everything about Travis Ford. Where he lives, where he drinks, who he owes money to, what kind of car he drives. Everything. Pete grinned, the kind of smile that meant trouble for someone who wasn't us. You planning something stupid? I'm planning something smart. There's a difference. It took me 3 days to put together Travis's profile. The man was predictable as a broken transmission, same routine every week, same weaknesses, same arrogant assumption that no one was paying attention to his life. He lived in Millbrook Heights, the new apartment complex that tried to look expensive but was really just overpriced. He drove a leased BMW that he couldn't afford on his middle management salary. He owed money to 2 different bookies and had been passed over for promotion twice in the last year. Most importantly, he had a weakness for showing off. On Thursday night, I put my plan into action. Travis always hit Murphy's bar after work, always sat in the same spot, always tried to impress whatever woman was unfortunate enough to be within earshot. Tonight was no different, except tonight I was ready for him. I walked into Murphy's at exactly 7:30 p.m. When the after-work crowd was thick enough to provide cover but not so thick that I couldn't move around, Travis was at his usual spot at the bar, talking to a blonde woman who looked like she'd rather be anywhere else. "So I told my boss," Travis was saying, his voice carrying that particular brand of arrogance that comes from 3 beers and an inflated ego. "If you want someone who can handle the difficult clients, you call me. These other guys, they don't have what it takes." I ordered a beer and positioned myself 2 stools down, close enough to hear but far enough away to seem casual. Then I pulled out Travis's phone. I'd lifted it from his gym bag that morning while he was in the shower. Amazing how easy it is to get into places when you know how to pick locks and people assume a guy in work clothes belongs wherever he is. The phone was still logged into his text messages, still showing his conversation with Kendra from the night before. Screenshots of everything, their plans to meet, his complaints about having to deal with the husband situation, Kendra's promises that I was too stupid to figure anything out. I'd uploaded everything to a thumb drive, but I wanted Travis to know I had it before I used it. "Excuse me," I said, tapping him on the shoulder. "You dropped this." Travis turned around, and I watched his face go white as he recognized both me and his phone. "Jack," he stammered, I didn't. What are you doing here? Having a beer, same as you. I smiled, the kind of smile that doesn't reach your eyes. Nice phone, by the way. You should be more careful with it. Never know who might pick it up and start reading your messages. The blonde woman looked between us, sensing trouble, and quickly made her excuses. Travis watched her go, then turned back to me with what he probably thought was a threatening expression. Look, man, about Kendra. What about her? She's your problem now, right? That's what you told her last night? Don't worry, baby, I'll take care of everything. Your husband's too dumb to be a real threat. Travis's hand tightened around his beer bottle. You don't know what you're talking about. I know exactly what I'm talking about. I know you've been sleeping with my wife for 3 months. I know you promised to leave your girlfriend for her. I know you told her I was probably cheating too, just to make her feel better about what she was doing. Each word hit him like a physical blow. Around us, the bar was getting quieter as people started to notice the tension. I also know, I continued, my voice still conversational, that you're about to become very famous in this town. See, I've got copies of every text message, every photo, every promise you made to my wife, and tomorrow morning I'm going to make sure everyone knows exactly what kind of man Travis Ford really is. I finished my beer and stood up, leaving a 20 on the bar. Enjoy your evening, Travis. It's going to be your last quiet one for a while. As I walked toward the door, I heard him call after me. You can't prove anything. I turned back one more time, and this time my smile was genuine. I don't have to prove anything, Travis. I just have to tell the truth. Turns out that's going to be more than enough. The next morning, I started with Lindsay Carpenter. Lindsay Carpenter thought she was untouchable. She'd built her whole identity around being the supportive friend, the woman who helped other women find their power and break free from toxic relationships. Her social media was full of inspirational quotes and selfies with captions about authenticity and sisterhood. What she hadn't counted on was a blue-collar mechanic who knew how to use a computer and had nothing left to lose. I'd spent the weekend going through Kendra's laptop, the one she'd left behind in her hurry to escape our house. Amazing what people leave in their browser history when they think no one's paying attention. Kendra and Lindsay's private messages told a story that would have made a soap opera writer blush. Lindsay hadn't just introduced Kendra to Travis. She'd been coaching her through the affair, giving her advice on how to hide it, even suggesting lies to tell me when I started getting suspicious. Better yet, Lindsay had been documenting everything on her own social media, posting cryptic messages about helping a friend discover her worth, and sometimes love means making hard choices. Monday morning, I created a fake email account and sent Lindsay's boss at the marketing firm where she worked a simple message. Thought you should know that one of your employees has been using company time and resources to help a married colleague conduct an extramarital affair. Screenshots attached. The screenshots were damning. Messages sent during work hours, using the company's Wi-Fi, discussing hotel reservations, and lies to tell spouses. But the real kicker was Lindsay's own posts, where she'd been stupid enough to mention her company by name while bragging about her role as a relationship consultant. By Tuesday afternoon, Lindsay was unemployed. By Wednesday, she was calling me. You bastard, she hissed into the phone. You ruined my life. I didn't ruin anything, I said, standing in my garage with a wrench in my hand and a smile on my face. I just told the truth. Your boss made his own decision about whether he wanted employees who help people commit adultery on company time. Kendra was unhappy. She deserved better than a loser mechanic who couldn't even satisfy his own wife. That stung, but I'd been expecting it. Maybe so. But she could have divorced me before she started sleeping with Travis. Instead, she chose to lie and cheat and drag you into it. How's that working out for everyone now? Lindsay was crying, which would have made me feel bad if I hadn't seen the messages where she called me pathetic and too stupid to live. This isn't over, she sobbed. Kendra's going to fight you in court. She's going to take everything you have. With what lawyer? Last I heard, she was staying at the Motel 6 because Travis decided he wasn't ready to complicate his living situation. Turns out having an affair is a lot more fun when you don't have to deal with the consequences. I hung up and went back to work on the transmission I was rebuilding. There's something satisfying about taking apart something that's broken and putting it back together the right way. It's honest work, the kind where you can see the results of your effort and know that you've made something better than it was before. That evening, Pete stopped by the garage with a six-pack and news. Travis got fired, he said, handing me a beer and settling onto an overturned crate. Apparently, someone sent his boss a bunch of screenshots showing him using company equipment to coordinate his affairs. Guy was using the conference room for phone intimacy with your wife. Imagine that, I said, not bothering to hide my satisfaction. Also, word is that Kendra's been trying to find a place to live, but nobody wants to rent to her. Seems like her reputation's gotten around town pretty fast. That was Mrs. Reardon's doing, I was sure. The woman was a one-person news network, and she'd been front and center for Kendra's meltdown on my porch. By now, everyone in Millbrook knew the story, probably with a few embellishments. Where's she staying? Motel 6 out by the highway. Travis was supposed to let her move in with him, but apparently his lease doesn't allow overnight guests for more than 3 days. Funny how these things work out. I was starting to feel almost sorry for Kendra. Almost. Then I remembered the messages where she and Lindsay had laughed about how clueless I was, how I was too pathetic to ever figure out what was happening right under my nose. Pete, I need another favor. You're really going all out on this revenge thing, aren't you? I prefer to think of it as consequences. Kendra and Travis and Lindsay all made choices. I'm just making sure they get to live with the results. What do you need? I need to know where Travis is staying now that he's unemployed. And I need to know if he's still seeing Kendra or if he's moved on to his next victim. Pete finished his beer and stood up. I'll make some calls. But Jack, you need to be careful. These people are desperate now, and desperate people do stupid things. Let them. I'm not doing anything illegal, and I'm not doing anything they didn't do to themselves. I'm just making sure the truth gets told. After Pete left, I sat in my garage for a long time, thinking about the man I'd been a week ago. That Jack Harmon had been trusting, maybe even naive. He'd believed that love meant something, that marriage vows were more than just words, that the woman he'd shared his bed with for 8 years wouldn't betray him for a middle management pretty boy with a leased BMW. This Jack Harmon knew better. This Jack Harmon understood that sometimes the only way to get justice was to take it yourself, one careful step at a time. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. We need to talk. This has gone far enough. K. I stared at the message for a long moment, then deleted it without responding. Kendra had had 8 years to talk to me. She'd chosen to talk to Travis instead. Now it was my turn to choose who was worth my time, and she wasn't on the list. Travis Ford was staying at his brother's place on the other side of town, a rundown duplex in a neighborhood where people minded their own business and didn't ask too many questions. I knew this because Pete had a cousin who lived 3 houses down and had seen Travis's BMW parked there every night since he'd gotten fired. What Pete's cousin hadn't seen was Travis sneaking around my garage at 2 a.m. on Friday night, trying to break in through the back door. I'd been expecting something like this. Desperate people do desperate things, and Travis was about as desperate as they come. No job, no money, no prospects, and a reputation that preceded him everywhere he went in Millbrook. A man in that position might think that planting some evidence in his enemy's garage could turn the tables in his favor. Too bad for Travis that I'd installed motion sensor cameras around my property 3 days ago. I was sitting in my office watching him fumble with the lock on my back door when Pete arrived. I'd called him as soon as the motion sensors triggered, and he'd come running like the good friend he'd always been. Is that really him? Pete whispered, peering at the security monitor. In the flesh. Look at what he's carrying. Travis had a backpack slung over his shoulder, and even in the grainy black and white footage, we could see him pulling items out of it. A baggie of what looked like white powder, a pair of women's underwear, a bottle of pills. Jerk is trying to frame you, Pete breathed. That's the plan. Kendra probably told him I keep cash in the garage safe. He plants some drugs and stolen property, calls in an anonymous tip, and suddenly I'm the bad guy with bigger problems than a cheating wife. We watched Travis finally get the door open and slip inside. The interior cameras picked him up immediately, showing him moving through my workspace with a flashlight, looking for the perfect places to hide his planted evidence. What's the play? Pete asked. We wait until he's committed. Let him plant everything, get it all on camera. Then we have a conversation. It took Travis 20 minutes to set his scene. He hid the drugs in my toolbox, stuffed the underwear behind some spare parts, and scattered the pills near my workbench. He was thorough. I had to give him that. If I hadn't been watching, I might never have found everything before the cops did. When he was finished, Travis stood in the middle of my garage, looking around with satisfaction. That's when Pete and I walked in through the front door. Evening, Travis, I said, flipping on the overhead lights. Working late? Travis spun around, his face going white in the harsh fluorescent glare. He looked like a deer caught in headlights. If deer carried backpacks full of evidence they just used to frame innocent mechanics. Jack, this isn't what it looks like. Really? Because it looks like you just broke into my garage and planted drugs in my toolbox. But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe you're here for some other reason. Pete moved to block the back door while I stepped closer to Travis. The man was shaking now, sweat beading on his forehead despite the cool night air. Look, man, we can work this out, Travis stammered. Kendra's been talking crazy, saying you threatened her. I just wanted to make sure you weren't going to hurt anyone. So you decided to plant evidence that would send me to prison? That's your idea of protecting people? I don't know what you're talking about. I pulled out my phone and showed him the security footage. Travis watched himself breaking in, watched himself hiding the drugs and pills and underwear, watched his own face as he looked around with satisfaction at his handiwork. Funny thing about security cameras, I said. They don't lie, unlike some people I know. Travis looked around desperately, but there was nowhere to go. Pete was blocking one exit, I was blocking the other, and we were both bigger than him despite his gym membership. What do you want? He asked finally. I want you to clean up your mess. Every baggie, every pill, every piece of evidence you just planted. Put it all back in your backpack. And then? Then you're going to get in your fancy BMW and drive out of Millbrook tonight. You're going to find somewhere else to live, somewhere else to work, somewhere else to ruin people's lives. And you're never going to come back. You can't make me leave town. I stepped closer, close enough that he could smell the motor oil on my clothes and see the calluses on my hands. Travis, you just committed breaking and entering, attempted evidence tampering, and conspiracy to file a false police report. I've got it all on video. You really want to test what I can and can't make you do? It took him 5 minutes to collect all the evidence he'd planted. His hands were shaking so badly he could barely pick up the pills, and he kept looking over his shoulder like he expected more people to come walking through the door. When he was finished, I walked him to his car. The BMW looked smaller somehow, less impressive in the harsh light of the parking lot. Travis, I said as he fumbled with his keys, there's one more thing. What? Kendra's been calling you, hasn't she? Asking when you're going to help her get back at me, when you're going to make good on all those promises you made? He didn't answer, but he didn't have to. I could see it in his face. Here's the thing. She's not your problem anymore. In fact, nobody in this town is your problem anymore because you're not going to be here. But if I were you, I'd change my phone number. Kendra's the kind of woman who doesn't handle abandonment well. Travis got in his car and drove away without another word. I watched his taillights disappear into the night, then went back into the garage to review the security footage one more time. Pete was waiting for me with a beer and a grin. That was almost too easy. Desperate people make stupid choices, I said. Travis has been making stupid choices for months. This was just the latest one. What about Kendra? I thought about that for a moment. Kendra was still out there, still angry, still looking for a way to hurt me the way I'd hurt her. But without Travis to help her, without Lindsay to coach her, without a job or a home or any allies in town, what could she really do? Kendra's about to learn that actions have consequences, I said, and some consequences last longer than others. My phone buzzed with another text from her unknown number. I know what you did to Travis. This isn't over. This time, I didn't delete the message. Instead, I forwarded it to my lawyer with a note. Documentation of continued harassment. Please advise on restraining order procedures. Then I finished my beer and went home to my empty house, where I slept better than I had in months. The Millbrook Summer Festival was the kind of small-town event that brought everyone together, whether they wanted to be together or not. Main Street was closed to traffic, lined with booths selling funnel cakes and handmade crafts, while a makeshift stage hosted local bands and community announcements. It was also the perfect place for a public reckoning. I'd spent the week preparing, calling in favors, and setting up the kind of multimedia presentation that would have made my high school AV teacher proud. The festival committee had been happy to let me sponsor the evening's entertainment, especially when I offered to pay for the upgraded sound system and projection screen. What they didn't know was exactly what I planned to project. Kendra showed up around 7 o'clock, just as I'd expected. She'd been staying at the Motel 6 for 2 weeks now, and the isolation was starting to show. Her hair wasn't quite as perfect as usual, her clothes looked like she'd been wearing them too long, and she had the desperate look of someone who'd run out of options. Lindsay was with her, which was a surprise. I'd heard that Lindsay had found a job in Springfield and was planning to leave town, but apparently she'd decided to stick around for one last attempt at salvaging her friend's reputation. They positioned themselves near the stage, probably hoping to cause a scene if I tried to make any public statements about the divorce. What they didn't realize was that I wasn't planning to say anything at all. At 8 o'clock, the mayor introduced me as the evening's sponsor and handed me the microphone. I looked out at the crowd, maybe 200 people, including most of Millbrook's permanent residents and quite a few folks from neighboring towns. Thank you all for coming out tonight, I said, my voice carrying clearly through the upgraded speakers. Before we get to the music, I wanted to share something with you. A little story about truth, lies, and what happens when people think they're smarter than everyone around them. I nodded to Pete, who was operating the projection system from behind the stage. The first image appeared on the screen, a text message conversation between Kendra and Travis dated 3 months ago. The crowd went quiet as they read Kendra's words. Jack's working late again. Perfect time for us to meet at the usual place. Travis's response? Your husband's an idiot. Can't believe he hasn't figured this out yet. A murmur went through the crowd. I saw Kendra's face go white, saw Lindsay grab her arm and start pulling her toward the street. But there was nowhere to go. The crowd was packed too tightly, and people were starting to turn and stare. The next slide showed more messages, these between Kendra and Lindsay. Are you sure Jack doesn't suspect anything? Please. The man can barely operate his own cell phone. As long as we're careful, he'll never figure it out. What if he does? Then we'll make it his fault. Men like Jack are so insecure, it's easy to make them look like the bad guys. The crowd was getting restless now, voices rising as people recognized the names and faces on the screen. I saw Mrs. Reardon pointing at Kendra, saw the Henderson family shaking their heads in disgust, but I wasn't done yet. The third slide was a photo, Travis and Kendra in the parking lot of the Red Roof Inn, taken from Kendra's own phone. She was laughing at something he'd said, her hand on his chest, looking happier than I'd seen her in years. The timestamp showed it was taken on our wedding anniversary. That's when the crowd turned ugly. Someone booed, then someone else, and suddenly there was a chorus of disapproval washing over the festival like a wave. Kendra was crying now, Lindsay was shouting something I couldn't hear over the noise, and people were pulling out their phones to take pictures. I held up my hand for quiet and got it, eventually. Now, I know what some of you are thinking, I said into the microphone. This is a private matter, something that should be handled behind closed doors. And you're right. It should have been. But when someone spends months telling lies about you, making you look like a fool in front of your friends and neighbors, sometimes the only way to set the record straight is to tell the truth in public. I clicked to the final slide, a screenshot of Kendra's Facebook post from the day after I'd thrown her out. She'd written a long, emotional message about how I'd become abusive and refused to work on our marriage, how she'd been forced to seek comfort elsewhere, because of my neglect and cruelty. 47 people had liked the post. Dozens had commented with support and sympathy for poor Kendra, abandoned by her heartless husband. This was posted the morning after I caught my wife cheating, I said. Not a word of it is true. But it got shared 36 times, and by the end of that day, half the town thought I was the kind of man who drove his wife into another man's arms. I handed the microphone back to the mayor and walked off the stage. Behind me, I could hear the crowd buzzing with conversation, voices raised in argument and speculation. Some people were defending Kendra, saying I'd gone too far. Others were calling her names that would have made a sailor blush. I didn't care about either group. I'd said what I needed to say, shown what I needed to show. The truth was out there now, and people could make their own decisions about what it meant. Kendra caught up with me at the edge of the festival, tears streaming down her face, Lindsay trailing behind her like a lost puppy. "How could you do that to me?" she sobbed. "In front of everyone I know?" "The same way you could lie about me on Facebook," I said. "The same way you could cheat on me for 3 months and then try to make it my fault. The same way you could let your friend coach you through an affair and then act surprised when there were consequences." "I made a mistake. People make mistakes." "You made a choice, Kendra. Every text message, every hotel room, every lie you told me about working late. Those were all choices. Now you get to live with the results." Lindsay stepped forward, her face flushed with anger. "You're a vindictive bastard, Jack Harmon. Kendra deserved better than you." "Maybe she did," I said. "But she didn't deserve Travis Ford, and she sure as hell didn't deserve a friend who helped her destroy her marriage for the entertainment value. How's that working out for both of you now?" I walked away, leaving them standing at the edge of the festival crowd, isolated and exposed. Behind me, I could hear Kendra calling my name, but I didn't turn around. The next morning, my brother called from Boston. "Jack, what the hell is going on up there? Someone posted a video of your little presentation on YouTube, and it's got 50,000 views already." "Really?" I hadn't checked. "This is going viral, man. People are calling it small-town justice and sharing it everywhere. You're famous." Famous wasn't what I'd been going for, but I couldn't say I minded. Let the whole world see what Kendra and Travis and Lindsay had done. Let them try to explain their way out of their own words, their own pictures, their own choices. "There's something else," my brother continued. "I got a call from Kendra yesterday. She wanted me to talk to you, convince you to be reasonable about the divorce settlement." "What did you tell her?" "I told her that reasonable went out the window when she decided to cheat on my brother and then lie about it on social media. I also told her that if she contacts me again, I'll forward all her messages to your lawyer." "Thanks, Mike. I appreciate it." "Jack, are you okay? Really okay? Because this whole thing seems pretty intense, even for someone who just got cheated on." I thought about that for a moment, standing in my kitchen with my coffee and my empty house and my new understanding of how the world really worked. I'm better than okay, I said. For the first time in years, I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. 3 weeks after the festival, Kendra made her final mistake. She'd been calling me every day, leaving voicemails that started with apologies and ended with threats. When I didn't respond, she tried showing up at my garage, at my house, even at the grocery store. Each time, I documented everything, took pictures, saved voicemails, kept a detailed log of every attempt at contact. My lawyer loved it. "She's building your harassment case for you," he said. "Keep this up, and we'll have grounds for a restraining order that'll stick for years." But Kendra wasn't done escalating. On a Tuesday morning in late July, I arrived at my garage to find every window smashed, my tools scattered across the floor, and "Liar" spray-painted across the wall in red letters 3 feet high. The security cameras had caught everything. Kendra and Lindsay working together in the pre-dawn darkness, taking turns with a baseball bat and a can of spray paint. They'd been thorough, thousands of dollars in damage, weeks of cleanup, and the kind of destruction that spoke to pure, unfiltered rage. I called the police first, then my insurance company, then Pete. By the time Officer Tate arrived, I had everything documented and ready to go. "Jesus, Jack," Billy Tate said, looking around at the destruction. "They really went all out." "Yep, and it's all on camera." We watched the footage together, Billy shaking his head as Kendra swung the bat at my front window as Lindsay kicked over my tool cabinet, as both women worked together to destroy everything I'd built over 20 years of honest work. "This is felony vandalism," Billy said, "maybe even burglary, depending on what they took. You want to press charges?" "Every single one you can think of." The arrest warrants were issued that afternoon. Kendra was picked up at the Motel 6, Lindsay at her new apartment across town. Both women were charged with breaking and entering, vandalism, and conspiracy to commit a felony. Kendra's bail was set at $10,000. She couldn't make it. Lindsay's was $5,000. Her parents drove up from Connecticut and paid it, then drove her back home the same day. For the first time since this whole thing started, Kendra was truly alone. She called me from jail, collect, her voice small and broken. "Jack, please, I'm sorry. I know I messed up, but this has gone too far. I need help." "You had help," I said. "You had Lindsay coaching you through an affair, Travis promising to take care of you, and 8 years of marriage to a man who would have done anything for you. You threw it all away for what? A few months of excitement with a middle manager who dumped you the second things got complicated?" "I know I hurt you, but nothing, Kendra. You made your choices. You chose to cheat. You chose to lie. You chose to destroy my business when you didn't get your way. These are the consequences. What do you want from me? What will it take for you to forgive me?" I looked around my garage, at the boarded-up windows and the spray paint still visible under 3 coats of primer, at 20 years of work that had been trashed in a single night of rage. "I don't want anything from you, Kendra. That's the point. You're not part of my life anymore. You haven't been since the night you decided that Travis Ford was worth more than our marriage." "But we can work this out. We can go to counseling, start over." "No, we can't. You know why? Because I don't trust you. I don't respect you. And I sure as hell don't love you anymore. You killed all of that when you chose to betray everything we built together." There was a long silence on the other end of the line. "So that's it?" she whispered. 8 years of marriage, and you're just going to throw it all away?" "I didn't throw anything away, Kendra. You did. The night you decided that sneaking around with Travis was more important than being honest with your husband. The morning you posted lies about me on Facebook. The day you destroyed my business because you couldn't handle the consequences of your own actions." "I hate you," she said, her voice cracking. "I know. But here's the thing. I don't care. Your hate doesn't matter to me anymore. Your love didn't matter when you were giving it to someone else, and your hate doesn't matter now that you've got nothing left to give." I hung up the phone and went back to work. The criminal trial lasted 3 days. Kendra pled guilty to all charges in exchange for a reduced sentence, 6 months in county jail, 3 years probation, and full restitution for the damage to my business. She tried to speak to me outside the courthouse, but I walked past her like she was invisible. The divorce was finalized 2 weeks later. Kendra got nothing. No alimony, no property settlement, no claim on my business or my house. The adultery clause in our prenup, which she'd signed without reading 8 years ago, made sure of that. On a warm evening in August, I sat on my front porch with a beer and watched the sunset paint the sky orange and red. Mrs. Reardon waved from across the street, the Hendersons called out a greeting from their yard, and Pete pulled into my driveway with a cooler full of beer and a grin on his face. "So," he said, settling into the chair next to mine, How does it feel to be free? I thought about that for a moment. Free from lies, free from betrayal, free from the constant stress of wondering what Kendra was really doing when she said she was working late, free from Lindsay's toxic influence and Travis's arrogant assumptions about my intelligence, free from people who thought they were smarter than me, better than me, more deserving than me. It feels, I said, raising my beer in a toast to the empty street, like coming home. Pete clinked his bottle against mine. To new beginnings. To old endings, I corrected. Some doors need to slam shut before you can open new ones. Later that night, after Pete had gone home and the neighborhood had settled into quiet, I got one last text from Kendra's number. I hope you're happy now. You destroyed everything. I stared at the message for a long moment, thinking about the woman who'd shared my bed for 8 years, who'd promised to love and honor and cherish me, who'd thrown it all away for a few months of excitement with a man who'd abandoned her the moment things got difficult. Then I typed back, I didn't destroy anything, Kendra. I just stopped pretending that what you broke could be fixed. The door is closed now. Don't try to open it again. I blocked her number, deleted the message thread, and went inside my house. My house, finally and completely mine again. The door slammed behind me with a sound like thunder, final and absolute, and exactly as loud as it needed to be.